Hello, AP Bio. Today we are going to talk about plant and animal behavior and response. I know you can't see me down there in the corner. I'm saving the video for a little demo that I want to show you at the end, so that is why. We're going to start by talking about plants. We're only going to talk on this briefly, but I want you to understand that plants do in fact respond to their environment and kind of exhibit things that could be considered behaviors in a similar way to what animals do, though of course it's not exactly the same. We call these plant responses tropisms. And in a minute here, you're going to watch a short video clip. It's only about 3 minutes, but it explains what a tropism is and gives you some examples. A basic definition of this is that it's a plant movement or growth behavior in response to a stimulus. And it's usually mediated by some kind of signaling molecule, what you could think of as a plant hormone. So what that means is that if a stimulus is detected, like light or something else, the plant will release a signaling molecule, a hormone, that goes and tells the cells what to do and how to grow. As you watch this video, it's going to talk about 3 different types. Make sure that you understand what geotropism, phototropism, and hydrotropism are. And also pay attention to the idea of a positive geotropism, for example, versus a negative geotropism. What do they mean by those terms? These types of growth patterns can be tested in an experiment. Here's an example of a very simple but kind of fun experiment that someone set up. Think about a couple things in this setup. Out of those tropisms you just learned about, which one are they trying to test? And also think about how they could improve this experiment design. There's something that they could do to isolate their variable a little bit further. In this case, this plant is demonstrating positive phototropism. It's growing towards the light. And so I think that's what they were designing the experiment for, but it is also exhibiting negative geotropism. It's growing away from gravity. It's growing up. To improve this, one thing that could be done is maybe to have a setup just like this, but have some boxes that were like sitting on their side or even upside down to see if the plant was truly growing towards the light or whether it was just doing its best to grow away from gravity, to kind of separate out those variables. So that's just one example of how this could be tested. Now we're going to switch and talk about animals, and we're going to spend a little more time here because we're going to start by talking about the idea of behavior. In a biological sense, behavior just means an action carried out by muscles that are directed by the nervous system. So that's a really broad definition. When we think about behavior, one of the things that scientists are interested in is figuring out the causes of behavior. You can think of cause in 2 different ways. We can talk about something called a proximate cause, which is basically looking at how the behavior actually happens. That would be things like, what is the stimulus that causes that behavior to happen? What signals are being sent through that organism's body that's kind of similar to the plant hormones or other physiological mechanisms? In other words, chemically, what's actually going on in that person's body or that organism's body and in the cells to make this happen? And finally, how do their experiences growing up affect this behavior? So that's just kind of how the behavior happens in the moment. So that's part of the cause. You can also think of the cause, like why do animals behave the way they do, in terms of what they call ultimate causation. This one is talking about why this behavior exists in the first place. This is kind of the natural selection piece. So how does this particular behavior improve the survival and reproduction for that organism? So we have an example here, this picture of birds migrating, which is a behavior that we see a lot of at this time of year. So think about this in terms of proximate causation. What do you think causes birds to migrate? What's the stimulus they're responding to? What effects during growth and development might lead them to this behavior? And then think about ultimate causation. How might this improve their survival and reproduction? All of those are different ways to kind of understand the reason behind behaviors. We can also divide animal behaviors into 2 categories. We can talk about what are called innate behaviors. These are what we think of as kind of instinctive behaviors. They're things that are programmed in an organism's DNA, and so they know how to do it from the instant they're born. Things like those little turtles up in the top of the screen automatically know how to go to the ocean the instant they're born. Nobody needs to teach them. Birds know how to build a nest. That is not something they're taught. Little ducklings know that they should just follow their mother and walk in a line. Those are innate behaviors. But other types of behaviors need to be learned. These are things that only happen after experience or practice. Think of anything that has to be trained or taught. So like teaching a dog a trick is an example of a learned behavior. A lot of predators, like the bears shown on the right, need to learn how to hunt from their parents by following them around and watching them so they know where to find food and how to catch it. Birds singing a song is an interesting example because often it's a combination of the two. Birds are born knowing how to sing and having the instinct to sing. So that's an innate behavior, but the specific song that a species of bird learns is usually a learned behavior. They pick up that song from listening to their parents and others of their species. We're going to talk today about one specific type of behavior called taxis. This is similar to tropism in plants, but now we're talking about animals. This also occurs in bacteria and protists, little single-celled pond creatures. Taxis is a movement towards or away from a particular stimulus. This is a type of innate behavior. This is instinctive. It's not something that they learn. So see if you can think of some examples of this. And also, we're going to think a little bit about how this might be related to population ecology and community interactions. How are these types of automatic movements attracted to or away from a stimulus related to populations and communities and kind of ecosystem dynamics? Specifically, what we're looking at this week is the taxis responses of fruit flies. And this is a very large fruit fly. I'm going to turn on the video now. And so down in the corner, you are going to see a whole bunch of little fruit flies. Here they are, crawling around in a vial. And I will make this a little larger. I know they're kind of blurry. It's hard to get a good focus on this camera. There, if I move them, they start wiggling around. But you can see all those little dots crawling around. I want you to notice where they are in the vial right now, because I'm going to give you an example here of a taxis type response. I'm going to flip this file upside down. Pay attention to where all those little buggers go. And now I'm going to flip it back. Did you notice which direction these fruit flies always want to go? We'll go like that again. Hopefully you notice that they're always heading towards the top. That is what's called geotaxis. Just like geotropism is a response to gravity, this would be considered a negative geotaxis because they're moving away from the pull of gravity. This week we're focusing on fruit fly behavior as an example of this taxis type of response. Some of you have already conducted your labs, some of you will be doing that tomorrow, and some of you will see it as a video. But in that lab, we are looking at what's called chemotaxis. So instead of responding to gravity, like these buggers are right now, we're going to look at their responses to different chemicals and see if that causes them to move towards or away from that particular stimulus. So that's all I have for you today. Let me know if you have any questions. Read the Google Classroom post to make sure that you have done everything you need to, but there is nothing specific to turn in today. So after you've read through the list, you may mark today's post as complete, and I hope you have a great day.